We're in Way Media.
Hello, twisted humans. Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked. I'm saving lives, okay?
Are you though, or are you just making
Do you think
yourself
this is
ill?
used for? I mean, why else would they want it? You know,
I don't doubt
It's
that it doesn't
life-saving.
save lives. I just doubt that going 8 times a month is good for your body.
I mean, that's how often you're allowed.
I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying that's a little sketchy. What are they doing?
They are saving lives. You can even.
I wasn't
didn't,
even
but
allowed to donate blood, and I'm a
Blood
healthy
is-
weight.
It's not blood though, because they give you your blood back.
Ugh. I hate
Which-
it.
I know
hate it.
that part's weird.
I can't.
It is weird.
It stresses me out. The idea of this machine that you've described stresses me out. And the
It
thought of it
looks
going
creepy.
into your body, you're tougher than I am.
That was when I almost passed out when they started giving it back, because it's the same needle. It's a much thicker needle because when they do give it back, it's thicker blood. We're talking about plasma, by the way. I don't know if you're going to leave this
I
in or
don't know.
not.
I might.
But yeah, it's a
of course,
much
somebody's
thicker
going to
needle.
turn it
So
on and they were like, oh, I'm on the wrong podcast. My bad.
what happened was I wanted them to do this arm, and I can still hardly open it all the way. I wanted them to do my left because you have to sit there for like an hour. So on my right, I was going to play on my phone. And so I asked them to do my left, and she stuck it in. She was like, all right, we're good. And then she turned around to turn on the machine, looked back at me and was like, oh no, we're not good. And I looked down and my arm was like the size of a golf ball. She's like, your vein did not like that. We cannot use this arm ever again. Like, you have to use your right arm from now on. It like, the vein like pushed the needle. And so when she took it out, my vein was open. It was gushing blood. And she was like, I'm going to need you to hold a lot of pressure on that arm for a minute. And she wrapped it super tight. But then we did this one and it was fine. I just have a little tiny dot. Like, it's barely anything. This one still hurts. It's probably going to be bruised and is a little swollen. But my right arm is fine. It took out a bunch of plasma, and then I felt it change. Like, I felt the difference of now it's coming back in. Because it's the same needle. It just, the needle goes out and there's 2 tubes. One for sucking and one for pushing.
I would like to quit the podcast.
And
I can't deal with blood,
I don't
first
like
of all.
looking. Yeah. No,
Ugh.
I don't like looking. Whenever someone puts something, whenever I get a tattoo, a piercing, anything, I can't look. Like, I turn my head away.
Yeah.
And so I felt
That's
the
a big
difference
dot. Ugh.
and just looked at it for a second, like, whoa, what's that? And as soon as I looked at it, I was like, oh no, I'm going to pass out.
That is
And they're like,
horrifying.
what? Are you okay? And I was like, no, I know what it feels like when
And
I'm going to
why
pass
is
out,
it
and I'm about to
thick?
pass out.
Like, that's the grosser part to me. It's not even like normal blood at that point.
because the liquid is
It's
out.
thick. So in The Sims, I have the vampire expansion, and they refer to blood as plasma in The Sims because, you know, sex isn't sex, it's woo-hooing. They gotta make it
Right.
kind of PG. So yeah, that's what they call blood in The Sims. So that's all I'm picturing right now is you as a Sim, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Because
it was
the
weird.
reality of what that is way weirder, and I can't deal with it.
It's very strange for sure.
Sierra's
Um,
saving lives, I guess.
am.
They don't pay
Oh,
you for
what I
shit
was
in Canada.
saying-
They don't pay you for your bits in Canada.
Well, they don't pay you for blood in America. It's only plasma. Plasma and bone marrow are the only two.
Bone
they pay you
marrow
for.
fucking sucks. Never done it, but I've heard.
Yeah.
Also, don't they pay you for sperm? And
Oh, yeah,
in
for sure.
Friends,
Sperm and
Joey
eggs,
like
yeah.
tries to donate his sperm all the time. Are you trying to find a fun fact?
I am.
This entire
This
first
entire
bit
thing
was
is
a
a
fun
fun
fact.
fact, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it counts.
Fun fact: when you donate your plasma, it's literally the liquid from your blood. They take your blood out, spin it around really fast.
She
until
just
the
wanted
liquid
to tell
comes
me
out,
again so she could laugh.
and then put the blood back in.
So horrifying.
But yeah, no. Anyways, that's what happened. They tried to put it back in, and I was like, I'm gonna die, and so they had to stop. But I still got my $90, and you're allowed to choose. Basically, adopt a life is what it's called. Like, you can choose who it goes to if you wanted to. Like, you could, because there's a list. Yeah, I didn't because I was like, give it to everybody. You know what I mean? But there's like a list. You can adopt a life and be like, this
really
is the person I'm
depressing.
helping.
Like, I feel like I would be really upset after going in there and doing that if I looked.
Yeah.
I think I would have to be like you and just be like, go for it.
Yeah.
I tried to
Just
donate
give it to
blood
anybody.
twice, but I was underweight at the time, and I'm anemic, and
I
I'm
am
just
also
all
usually
sorts
anemic.
of things.
I've been taking iron pills, though, so I could do this. Jesse had back pain recently.
Oh no!
And-
Oh no! Did he Google it?
And I thought he pulled a muscle. And I was like, okay, you pulled a muscle because the day before
You're old.
we were trying to make guacamole and the avocados were not ready. They were not fucking ready. And I told him, I was like, they're not, it's not coming out. It's not working. It's hard. It's as hard as a fucking rock. But he grabbed a spoon and he was in there digging it and he was like, he wanted guacamole so bad. And I'm pretty sure.
Tell me that Jesse pulled a muscle in his back from making guacamole.
I am pretty sure, yes. But he won't tell that story. He says that he thinks it was from when we had sex later that night. He's like, I pulled a muscle having sex. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, I really don't think that was the case at all.
Don't
but
give
whatever.
yourself that much credit, sir. It was from the avocados.
But
That might be the greatest story
for
I've
like
ever heard.
3 whole weeks, it gets better. For like 3 whole days, he was in so much pain. He was in bed. And he was like, it hurts right here. Like, this is what's going on. And so
It's
we
like
were
your
Googling.
sciatic nerve. That's right there.
Well, it wasn't on the spine, though.
Oh.
It was kind of on the side. And so we're Googling. We're like, oh my God, this is a kidney thing. Like, you might have kidney stones or kidney, like, are your eyes yet? Like, what's going on? And so then we started Googling about kidney problems. And
I had a really bad kidney infection once, and that's where the pain
well,
was.
One of the issues with kidney problems is people who have diabetes have kidney problems a lot. And so then I was like, oh no. And I clicked diabetes and it's like frequent urinating, always thirsty, blurry vision. He just got glasses. We always talk about how he pees more than I do when I was pregnant. And I was like, you have fucking diabetes and you're in kidney failure. And then after those 3 days, he was like, I'm fine. I just pulled a muscle having sex. And I was like, I think it was the avocado still, but whatever.
It was
So-
the avocados. I feel like I need to keep that part in just so it's on the record for future and fully knowing that he'll never hear it. So
Of course.
it was
of
the
course.
avocados.
But tell me your fun fact.
I don't know how to move on from that. Fun fact, I'm allergic to avocados. And apparently
What?
there's something in avocados. Yeah, it's a really horrible allergy. I'm so sad about it because I love guacamole. But there's a...
How do you even eat it?
What?
How do you know what guacamole tastes like if you're allergic to avocado?
It was like a late onset allergy. I've had
Oh, gosh.
avocados before. But when me and my cousin went up to the island once to go check out some of the beaches and possibly go surfing, we made a little picnic and chips and guacamole was one of them. And the whole way back, I had like stabbing stomach pains and like bloating and I thought I was going to die. And then the next day, my aunt made salad that had avocado in it, and I had the same reaction. So I was like, it has to be avocado. But I've been allergic to latex most of my life, speaking of sex. And there's something in avocados that's used to make latex. So,
Oh. Interesting.
so that's my
That's a
fun, fact for you.
Yep.
There we
That
go.
works.
Yep, right. It all comes back to avocados.
It works for
And
me.
it makes me think of that little kid that's like, an avocado, thanks. That gets it in a stocking.
Yep.
So cute.
Yep. Every time I say avocado around my kids, I say thanks. And they go, thanks. Yeah. It's hilarious. I am doing an unsolved case today, so we know. Sorry for this 15-minute
The
long
weirdest intro ever.
And I like to misunderstand assignments, but some of the cases are unsolved. Many are actually
Exactly like last time. Some of the people disappeared, but some were murdered.
Many of the cases are technically solved. Some are just missing persons. The reason why I'm touching on so many cases right now at the beginning, the underlying issue here that I'm going to talk about today is still an unresolved issue. And so that's why I chose this as my unsolved topic. So when we get into this in just a couple
the Highway
minutes,
of Tears?
It is not the Highway of Tears, but I will be talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women in the United States.
Okay. Because I was like, I thought we said we were going to do that together, but I am excited. This is an important thing to talk about. So,
yes. First, let's talk about what you're drinking, because I'm still drinking water.
Well, guys, me and Sierra, given our day that you have heard about thus far, I have a lung infection, had to pick up medications. We didn't have time for a sangria today, but I am drinking lemonade from Burger King because that's what I had for dinner and what I had time for. But I put Pink Whitney in it, so.
Oh, that works. That is a cocktail
in
there.
itself, right? Kevin's
also,
like, you're trash. You're putting Pink Whitney inside of a Burger King cup right now. Look at yourself. You're 30 years old. I'm like, I don't see anything wrong with this.
Yeah, 30, flirty, and thriving. Yeah. Okay. Jeez.
You're just mad you're not drinking pink vodka.
If you all want a sangria recipe, this is episode 133. There are half of that many sangria recipes. So go into our backlog, find one, have it, or just put some Pink Whitney and some lemonade. It's great. Before we get into my topic, we do have to take a quick little break here to hear from One Nothing Podcast. So I wanted to cover this topic in November, and specifically this week, the week of the United States' Thanksgiving, because it is important to remember the sad and brutal truth of the history of our holiday. People say that the reason history is taught in schools is so that we don't repeat it, but learning history so it doesn't repeat itself doesn't really help if we're learning the wrong history, right? So I think it's pretty well known and obvious in 2023 now that Christopher Columbus was no hero and should not be celebrated. But he is taught about because he was the start of what we now know as our country here. That's fine, wars used to happen, and having the United States become the United States was a big help to a lot of people who fled from their European and other countries where they were not taken care of or treated well. But it did also hurt many Indigenous people who already lived here. And their history should not be erased just because we're thankful for having this land to escape to. So when you're giving thanks for having this safe country to live in this holiday season, don't forget to pay reverence to the people who lost their lives so that we could have these freedoms. And I'm not talking about the United States military people who lost their lives. I'm talking about people long before them, the people who literally were forced to give up their lives and their homes and their families so that we could have ours. I know that we personally didn't do it, our parents didn't do it, even our grandparents probably didn't do it. If it were up to us and our parents and our grandparents, I would hope they would never do it in this day and age, knowing all that we know. So you don't necessarily need to feel guilty, but you should feel empathy and respect towards these Indigenous peoples. And in respecting them, the least we should be doing is trying to help support the ones who survived, their kids, their grandkids, great-grandkids. But unfortunately, since colonization 500 years ago, Indigenous people, specifically Indigenous women and children, are still being taken and killed. I know that Canada is more open about talking about these things, and a lot has come out about Indigenous people being missing and murdered in Canada. It's considered a national crisis and a genocide in Canada. But in the United States, it's not really touched on as much. Well, in the United States, the statistics are skewed because a lot of times the Indigenous race and ethnicity is misidentified on death certificates. Or, as we will see with many cases, their deaths are not reported as homicides. They're almost always reported as undetermined or accidental, or a lot of times hypothermia. But even with these skewed reports, even with their ethnicity being misidentified, or their, death certificates saying that it was undetermined or accidental, even with all of that, Indigenous women are still 10 times more likely than the average person in the United States to be a victim of murder. That's fucking insane.
Yeah, that's a really heartbreaking statistic.
Oh, there's a lot more of them I will touch on. So obviously, I can't talk about all of the missing and murdered Indigenous women. There are just way too many of them. But I am going to talk about a few and the different circumstances surrounding each case. Let's start with the most well-known name and the least well-known story of what is considered to be the very first MMIWG case, which, by the way, stands for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Sometimes they also add 2S on it, which means two-spirit, and a two-spirit person, I learned, is a person who is, the Americanized term, I guess, would be like a transgender person, a person who may have a male or female body, but feels as if they are a woman. So MMIWG2S is what it usually is. But that very first ever case was Pocahontas. I'm sure we've all seen the Disney movie.
Yeah, the Disney
right?
movies are problematic. Now I'm stressed. Okay.
Yep. Maybe many of us even know that it was based on a true story. But the story told from Disney's perspective, and even from U.S. history's perspective, is completely wrong.
Yes, I did know that part.
The fake story is that a woman named Pocahontas was a Native American or American Indian or Indigenous woman who lived alongside settlers and eventually fell in love with one, John Smith. It's a beautiful story of how differences can be overcome and two opposite people can find love and understanding. I guess it's a good message, but the truth behind it is so sinister.
It's pretty dark. Like, the first half of the movie is super cute and has, like, animals and singing, and that part is really nice, but the second half, it does get horrific when you think about... Yeah.
But it's way worse than that.
I know
Disney
you're going to get
does
there.
not
I'm
touch
just
it.
saying that Disney, even as a kid, I remember not liking the second half of that movie.
Yeah. So firstly, Pocahontas was not her name. It's a nickname. This nickname means playful child or ill-behaved child, because sometimes being playful is bad behavior in olden days.
Yeah.
Her actual name was Amonute.
Okay.
And her private name, so that was like her birth name was Amonute. And then they have like a more spiritual private name, and that was Matoaka.
That's beautiful. Okay.
It's funny that Disney used her nickname, which described her as a child, because they're kind of giving away a truth from the original story in that she was literally a child.
Yep.
She was like 12 years old.
Oh, that's even grosser than The Little
friendly.
Mermaid. The Little Mermaid is like 16.
Yeah, she was 12 when she became friendly with the adult man, John Smith.
Yeah, that's not okay. All right.
However, in real life, they never fell in love. It was not a love story. They were just friends.
Okay.
She was one of very few people who paid him any kindness, as most other Indigenous people were scared of him. I mean, they were scared of all white people, but Pocahontas, or Amonute, was like, trying to see the other side.
Okay.
So that's where the story comes from. It does not end in happily ever after for Amonute. When she was about 16 years old, she was kidnapped by Englishmen, not John Smith. Her and John Smith were friends, and then he went on his business.
Okay, their relationship in real life was also beautiful. Good to know.
Right. It was a friendship. He taught her how to read. She taught him how to
Oh.
speak. Yeah. So she was kidnapped by Englishmen when she was 16 years old. She was murdered. I'm sorry, not. She was married already at that time, and her husband was murdered.
Okay. You really just stressed me out there.
I'm sorry.
I'm like, okay.
I mean,
Just throw that into the middle of your sentence.
Yeah, well, we'll get there.
R.I.P. to her husband, though.
Yes. When she was 16, she was kidnapped. Her husband was murdered. She was taken to England. She was raped.
Oh,
She birthed a child. She was converted to Christianity, and her name was changed to Rebecca.
ew. That's not even a good... Sorry. No offense to the Rebeccas out there, but that's not even like a good... Like, if you're going to change your name, make it something epic. Like Princess Consuela
Banana Hammock.
God damn it. Rebecca.
Yeah. These things all happened to her unwantingly,
Yes.
but somewhat willingly,
okay.
because she thought that it would help her relatives back home.
Oh, like if
She
she
was
cooperated
trying-
with the white men,
Exactly.
that they would be...
Exactly. She was
Spared.
trying to prove to people in England that Indigenous people were not savages like they thought, and they did not need to be killed. It would all be okay. At the same time, the settlers who literally stole her were trying to prove to the few English people, because there were some, who were against colonization.
Okay.
They were trying to prove that the Indigenous people are okay with us being there. They want to convert to Christianity. Look,
No, but...
young girl Pocahontas converted and is now Rebecca. They want us there. So Amunote was helping herself and her family. The Englishmen were helping themselves and
Their
their
families.
their colonization. So they were helping themselves, but kind of helping each other at the same time.
Okay.
Eventually, they agreed to allow Amunote to return home. She was allowed to go back to her family.
How gracious
But
of
before she
them
left-
after kidnapping her. Okay.
Right. But before she left, they wanted to have one last dinner meal together. And at that dinner, the last dinner, she died of what they claimed was a sickness, but was probably a poisoning. She was not even 21 years old yet. So that was the real Pocahontas,
Ugh.
unfortunately.
God damn it, Walt Disney.
Yeah. Like I said, these things continue to happen to Indigenous women and girls to this day. Stereotypes will say that these people spend all their money gambling and drinking and doing drugs, so of course there will be crime. And firstly, that doesn't fucking matter.
No.
All humans deserve to be treated like humans and no one should be murdered.
100%.
But also, even in the circumstances where those stereotypes might be true, settlers literally caused those things. And these Indigenous people didn't just decide to start drinking and doing drugs and gambling. They never lived this way until settlers introduced those things to them.
Not to mention
After-
the attempt to cope from trauma that they caused.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. And they introduced these things after killing all of their family members.
Yeah, and
So,
drink
like,
and gamble
of
myself
course-
away too, right?
Well, also, okay, here's the thing. If a bank robber is pointing a gun at a banker and saying, open the safe, the banker isn't the criminal for opening the safe.
No.
The gun holder is for forcing them to.
Yeah.
The settlers killed everybody and then said, we'll let you live. By the way, here's some drugs, alcohol, and gambling. So they're like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to do this now. Because otherwise I'm going to die like everybody else.
Yeah.
You know? They wanted to live. So
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
Indigenous people used to be known for their belief in women being sacred. Their women, and all women, really, were viewed as of utmost importance because of their
Aw.
relation to Mother Earth. And I have heard that today they believe that as the treatment of the land gets worse, so
Oh.
does the treatment of the women. It's connected, which makes a whole lot of creepy spiritual sense. But there is kind of proof to that, and that is this thing that is called man camps.
Okay, this
Have you heard of man camps?
No, they sound horrifying though.
Whenever oil pipelines are being added or extended in parts of the United States and even Canada, the workers who are there to build them are housed in little temporary trailers, like pop-ups, camps.
Okay.
These workers are usually men. They usually are not needed to give background checks, and they're usually not from around the area.
Oh, God.
They're like seasonal employees who are paid a good price to go do hard labor in the middle of nowhere to get the pipelines up and going. They work all day, get bored at night because there's nothing to do in these areas. So they find alcohol and drugs and women, many of whom are not willing participants,
And
to have
they're
some fun with.
fun. Yeah.
In a study from 2006 to 2012, the rate of violent aggravated assault rose by 70% in an area where man camps were put up for oil pipeline workers. Sexual assault, rape, homicide, and negligent manslaughter. Come on, it's fucking murder. But anyway, also rose by 30%. And guess where these oil pipelines are most often put in? Directly outside of Indigenous reservations. Literally, like on the line. Indigenous women and children are their neighbors. So, man camps pop up outside your neighborhood. Suddenly, everybody's frickin' dying. That's insane. The land in the United States that was so graciously allowed to be Indigenous land is land that no one wants. Areas where there is nothing to do, no one wants to put anything except maybe oil pipelines. Naturally, a lot of Indigenous people find themselves in shitty situations. If there's nothing around them, then there's nowhere to work. Poverty strikes hard. They grow up around drugs and alcohol, being in foster homes, sometimes living on the streets because they have no money. Those things tend to make women extremely vulnerable in normal situations. We talk about addicts and sex workers being more vulnerable and less looked after by law enforcement all the time. But then add to it that these are Indigenous people, specifically women. There are so many confusing jurisdictional laws and hoops that everyone has to jump through to help or be helped in these communities. Anytime a crime is suspected to have happened and Indigenous people are involved, each agency needs to know who is the victim, where did it happen, and who is the perpetrator, so that they know who has jurisdiction over this case. But a lot of times that information isn't known, and by the time it is all known, it's too late. The crime can't be stopped, the perpetrator has fled, or the victim has died or been taken out of the state. Reservations have their own law enforcement, but they can only hold Native Americans accountable for crimes, even if a non-Native did the crime on the reservation. Then there is the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and they only respond to things that happen on the reservation. So if the perpetrator leaves the reservation, it's done. They can't do anything. They can only be on. The BIA can only come on. So like literally, a guy at a man camp can come onto the reservation, beat someone up, and leave. And who's doing that? Local law enforcement can respond to things that have happened not on the reservation, but they won't interfere with Native law enforcement. And when I say interfere, I also mean they won't cooperate. Local law enforcement won't cooperate because Indigenous people who live on the reservation don't pay taxes, and local police get paid from taxpayer dollars. So they feel like they don't have to help people who aren't taxpayers. And even if they don't live on the reservation and they are taxpayers, there is the stigma, I mean, it's true though, that MMIWG cases never get solved. And so the local police don't want to take on a case they think will never be solved because it makes their numbers look bad. They don't want to be known as a force who can't solve cases. In cases...
We'll lie to
It's,
solve cases, but we
it's,
won't go after cases we know we can't solve.
it's
okay.
seriously like a chicken running around with his head cut off.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
Chaos.
In the cases with Indigenous women that local police do reluctantly take on, they almost always list it as anything other than homicide, so they can wrap it up in a nice little bow and call it solved. Such as in the case of Karen Bluebird Mesteth.
Why didn't
Who
you
was
tell me I was
missing?
going to need a bigger drink for this? Sorry. I'm so mad.
Who was missing from Sioux Falls, South Dakota area in the summer of 2021. Karen had moved off of a reservation in search of a better life for herself. She was out looking for jobs. Her family, I know, I just completely skipped over it.
Sierra is drunk when she's not drinking, guys.
I just get so into it that I'm like reading ahead.
I do it
Her
too.
family hadn't heard from her for about 2 months when the police finally located the woman. They responded to a call from a motel about a woman bleeding in a room. The woman, of course, was Karen Bluebird Mesteth. Karen died from her injuries that her family had heard rumors about being from having been badly beaten and raped. But her cause of death, as the coroner said, was due to severe medical issues. And her
What's that
manner
even
of death was listed as undetermined. I don't know. Like, are they
Thanks.
trying to say she was
Blanket
sick?
statement.
Like,
yeah.
the fuck?
Just blanket
Severe
statement.
medical issues.
Her body just couldn't live anymore due to reasons. Thanks.
Mhm.
Ugh.
This case is unsolved in the eyes of the family and Indigenous people everywhere. They want justice for Karen, but no one
Absolutely.
seems to be looking into the incident any further. Speculating probably won't help, but when it seems like nothing else is being done, it might not hurt either. One of the things that comes to mind for me in this situation is human trafficking. Let's get to some more awful statistics. 4 out of 5 Indigenous women and girls will experience violence in their life, and more than half of the time it is sexual violence. And almost always it is a non-native perpetrator.
And almost always is not welcomed.
They will rarely see their perpetrators arrested or punished for these crimes. These women and girls are often called strong for being able to survive these attacks. They're told it could be worse, you're alive. But then they have to live with this brutality for the rest of their lives, with the memory and the anger and the fear, and many of them turns to drugs and alcohol to cope.
Yeah.
And look, we just made a full circle.
Oh, look at that. Just because you're strong doesn't mean you don't need justice for something
Exactly.
horrific happening to you.
Human trafficking, especially in the cases of Indigenous women and children, isn't always like the typical slave woman tied up with chains that you might picture from Nebraska.
Thank goodness, because we just talked about that on Bitch and Wine last month,
Yeah.
guys, and it was horrific. But the best
It was.
podcast. But horrific.
Unfortunately, many trafficking victims don't even know that they're being trafficked.
Yeah.
They could just go out one night, unknowingly get their drinks spiked by seemingly fun guys, and be persuaded to go back to their place. Then have their drinks spiked night after night, or be offered more and more drugs and alcohol, and meeting more and more seemingly fun guys to get with. Essentially, they become a sex worker with a pimp, except they never consented to it, and they don't realize that the men who they met that first night are the ones profiting off of their declining health and abuse. Like I said, I can't get to every case, but there
Oh, gosh.
is a documentary that I watched, and one of the assumed victims of human trafficking, her name is Shakaya, and she is thought to be alive. People keep seeing her in different places. However, she's not in a state ever when they see her that seems like it's really her. She's always drunk or drugged and, out at parties, and people are paying for her. And her parents don't believe she knows that this is happening. So it's tough. Unfortunately, it is not just non-natives that are a threat to Indigenous women, though. Just living in the United States has made many Indigenous men more susceptible to the misogynistic lifestyle and norms here. The main unsolved case that I want to cover today is that of Selena Not Afraid, who went missing from the Crow Reservation in Bighorn County near Billings, Montana. Selena had the very worst life you could even imagine. Like, I was watching the documentary and this case was touched on, and I was just fucking crying staring at my TV. Like, I cry anyway, but this one was bad. So, her parents split when she was young. She had a twin sister, an older brother and sister, and a younger sister. In 2015, when Selena was only 11 years old, her twin sister completed suicide by hanging herself. At fucking 11.
Why?
As a twin.
And as a twin,
Selena,
there's that...
Selena took this very hard and felt like half of her was missing. She was taken to live with her father, as he did not want his surviving daughter to be in any danger, which he allegedly suspected she might be in the home where his deceased daughter felt the need to end her life.
Yeah.
But shortly after that, Selena, in her family's own words, quote-unquote, found her voice. And she accused her father of sexual abuse. No charges were pressed and no evidence came of this, but it's important to note that her father was the adopted brother and best friend of the chief of the chief of police, the sheriff in Bighorn County. So, like, the head guy there.
And if he was also abusing his other daughter, that
Right.
could be a reason why she ended her life.
Yeah. Her father also, as something to note, he did not protest the allegations much. He just said that if his daughter was going to accuse him of such things, then he didn't want anything to do with her. And so she went back to live with her mom and her other siblings. Around that same time, Selena's father was offered a position with the police department by his best friend / brother / some sources even said cousin. But he denied the position because he didn't want to deal with the bad press of having been accused of being a child molester to his own daughter. So that was 2015. And then in 2017, Selena's older brother died in a shootout with police. I don't have much information on this incident, so I can't tell you if this was legal and justified, but it caused more trauma for Selena. And the very next year, in 2018, her older sister was killed in a hit and run that was never solved. By this time, Selena was obviously fucking depressed. And her family was very lenient with her because she had been through so much already. They let her kind of do and get away with whatever she wanted. But she was also a very kind and smart kid.
Yeah.
So they were just giving her a bunch of freedoms.
Which can sometimes be damaging too.
Right.
In that state. Oh, so sad.
Well, in 2019, Bighorn County had two very prominent MMIWG cases come out that caused a huge backlash and protests for change. The first was that of a 14-year-old girl named Henny Scott, who went missing after allegedly, quote-unquote, walking off on her own. No Amber Alert was issued, and no investigative efforts were made until after her body was found. Her body was found 2 weeks later, near the home she was last at, outside in the cold. Her official, which first of all, like, how was her body there for 2 weeks? Her family was searching everywhere. They fucking searched there. Her official cause of death was determined to be hypothermia. She must have just
weird accident.
laid there and died.
Yeah, as we all do. We walk away, lay down, and die.
No further investigation was done, but her family said that she had bruises and burns on her body. Her nose seemed to be broken, and she was wearing pants that were not hers, with a shirt that was not hers pulled off and laying next to her body. So not even on her. But of course, police are like, she took her shirt off because when you get hypothermia, you get hot or you feel hot.
Yeah, but you don't
So she must have taken her
burn
clothes
yourself and or break your nose.
Yeah. The same year, another girl, 18-year-old Kaysera Stops Pretty Places, disappeared on August 24th, after a night out to celebrate her 18th birthday. Again, no one looked for her other than her own friends and family because it's not a crime to leave when you're 18. 5 days later, a jogger reported a body lying on the side of a busy road. It was Kaysera, but her body was decomposed enough that the police first labeled her as a Jane Doe, even though her phone was there with her body and could have identified her.
Yeah.
She disappeared on August 24th. She wasn't officially identified until September 11th. She was Jane Doe that whole time. After being identified, the coroner, who also happens to be the funeral home director in this town, cremated the girl's remains, which is a big no-no in Indigenous culture. According to the family's beliefs, not being buried as a whole person on their land will mean that Kaysera will never be able to go on to the afterlife because this coroner decided to cremate her. The family tried to sue him for this, but the case was dismissed.
What the fuck? You didn't tell her, your family, that it was her. And, that's so disrespectful.
The official ruling was that the cause and manner of death was undetermined because she was too badly decomposed to know what had happened. But no further investigation was done into the situation. And now there's no body, so there's nothing they can do. Rumors around town are that either her friend's boyfriend may have had something to do with it, or that the police may have. And this is all speculation, but the police were seen in the area where her friends last saw her that night, and the police also had a recent history with Kaysera's family. They had beaten and arrested her little brother at a recent protest for allegedly being unruly, and Kaysera videoed it and put it all over social media.
Oh no.
And now she's just gone and there's no evidence. Because of these two incidents, both in 2019, marches were being held on behalf of MMIWG in Bighorn County. And so when Selena Nonafraid went missing on January 1st, 2020, the police seemed to take it a lot more seriously. They knew they were being looked at.
Looking at a picture of her right now, she's so cute.
Of Selena? Yeah. So here's the story. Selena had been invited to a New Year's Eve party the night before. She was only 16, and this party was going to have older adults there. I believe she was actually invited by a 20-year-old woman. But she was going with friends, and as I said before, her family was very lenient with her. She was a good girl who had been through a lot, and they wanted her to have fun and be a kid, even if that meant getting into a little trouble like underage drinking.
The underage drinking is fine. The underage drinking with people that are adults is what feels gross to me.
Yeah. She went to the party. She had a good time. She was there all night. And then in the next morning, she called her mom at about 9 a.m. asking to be picked up. Her mom said she sounded fine, but the party was over and she was just ready to go. It was a normal night. The party went smoothly. Everything was fine. When her mom got there, though, Selena was not there anymore. The people who were still there said that she and some friend that she made got a ride back with some older guys in a van. Selena or her friends or the guys, I'm not exactly sure who, posted a video to Snapchat shortly after of all of them riding in the van together. Except in the video, Selena was slurring her words like she was drunk or drugged or something. And this is suspicious because she was not talking that way when she originally called her mom at 9 a.m. She sounded completely fine, like she had already sobered up. Police were eventually called out to a rest stop area a few hours later about Selena being missing. Her friend said that the car stopped at the rest area on this major highway. This is Highway I-90, and it is a highway known for sex trafficking, especially of Indigenous girls and women, because it goes right through the reservation. They stopped over at the rest area, and the vehicle had broken down. So randomly, this van just breaks down at the rest area. Convenient. The men who owned the vehicle were trying to get the vehicle working again. And Selena and this friend, who based on the things that I heard, I don't think that they were like this is my friend from whenever. I think this was some girl that she met at the party that they became friendly. I think this was a stranger. Anyway, Selena and the girl started walking towards the road, towards the highway. The friend said that she stopped on the side of the highway and just sat down, but that Selena kept walking over towards and into a field where she would have had to jump over a barbed wire fence. Her family was suspicious from the start because how and why would she choose to go into this field? Also, the only people who are telling the story are the last 3 people to be seen with her, and it doesn't feel real.
Yeah. I personally
didn't matter.
choose not to jump over barbed wire fences personally, but
Also, when your car breaks down, if you're at a rest stop when that happens, you're real fucking lucky. Like, usually it breaks down on the side of the road. And then point 2 is, why the fuck would this friend and Selena even walk towards the road? You're at a rest area. If you're cold, go in the building. Point number 3, the friend is like, oh, I decided to just sit on the edge of the road. Why? You wouldn't do that. And then Selena just kept walking into a field by herself. Again, if she was cold or something, she would just go in the... Okay, anyway. It doesn't matter. They were there that same day searching. The police officers were there. They had helicopters. They had people searching on horse. They had people on ATVs. They had drones. They had dogs. They were sure they were going to find her. They had everybody there. So many volunteers came out to help, like random people that didn't even know them because it was on the news right away. They had to set up food stations at the rest area for these volunteers. There were so many people. Even the FBI got involved pretty quickly. Not right away, but pretty quickly. After 20 days of searching, Selena Not Afraid's body was discovered only 3/4 of a mile from the rest area. She was found in a sort of curled up position with her shirt partly off. Her official cause of death was hypothermia, and police say that she was probably there the whole time, died of dehydration and starvation in the cold. Though no animal activity happened to her body while it laid there for 20 fucking days, and no one discovered her in the 20 days of searching that area with horses and helicopters and drones and ATVs and fucking scent dogs. But she was there the whole time. It was hypothermia. No, it doesn't. None of them do. Yeah. There was no alcohol discovered in her autopsy, but they do think maybe that it just metabolized, depending on how long she was out there. And no further investigation was done because they believe this was all just a terrible accident. She walked off while she was drunk, she was cold, she died. No foul play was indicated, they said, despite the scratches all over her body, which they chalked up to her crawling around in the cold. And then the real kicker in this case is that right after her death, her father finally took that position at the police department. He was appointed the undersheriff of Bighorn County by his best friend / brother / cousin. But he said he took this position under the condition that he is not allowed to investigate his daughter's death, because that would compromise any investigation. Not that there is an investigation anyway. So, real convenient, this is all alleged, that you wanted to be a police officer for the county, but you couldn't because your daughter was accusing you of sexual abuse. But then your daughter dies, and now you can be part of the police department. What the fuck is that?
it's suspicious
Why?
and disgusting is what it is.
It is suspicious and disgusting. And I did find that the only person who was charged with anything in relation to this was the 20-year-old woman who invited her to the party. She was charged with child endangerment or something stupid which, I mean, I don't think a 20-year-old should be partying with a 16-year-old, but I also don't think that it's her fault that all of this stuff happened.
No, not at all.
So, yeah. There are still so many unsolved cases of MMIWG2S people, and unfortunately, I don't have any insight into how to get these cases solved. There is just no right answer. You could say that government police needs to play a bigger role in the crimes that happen on reservations. But these people just don't trust the government agencies, and how could they? Giving government more power just seems like it might hurt the Indigenous people because of all of the racism they face. And then you could say that the Indigenous reservation police need more power to prosecute people who aren't from there. But that's just not how this society can work. If the government gave one group of people that kind of power, more groups of people, bad groups of people, like cult leaders and religious leaders, would expect that same power, and that could get really dangerous. Not to mention, as I said earlier, not all Indigenous people are good people anymore, having been influenced by Westerners' misogynistic ideologies.
Yeah.
If the wrong men were given that much power, things could get worse for Indigenous women.
Yeah.
So the most I can offer as what can we do now is we all need to educate ourselves and others on these ongoing issues. Keep talking about it. Don't let their stories go unknown. Watch Murder in Bighorn on Showtime and visit niwrc.org to help support the National Indigenous Women's Resource Centers. And, while you're celebrating Thanksgiving, don't forget that these people are fucking suffering. So maybe you can donate something or
like blood
use
plasma.
your voice to spread no, like money to women who need a safe place to live in these Indigenous communities. Yeah, and if you can't afford to donate anything, use your voice to talk about these women to everyone around you. When people are like, "Oh, I love Thanksgiving.
Share this
I'm
episode.
so glad that we're here." Yeah, let people know that bad things happened and are still happening.
Yeah. Share
It's
this
easy.
episode. I can share a couple other podcasts that have covered really good stories on missing and murdered Indigenous women. So
it's easy to think the first Thanksgiving was so long ago. We can't keep holding on to that. But the thing is that this shit is still fucking happening.
Yeah. It
These
would be
people
different
are still in danger.
if it was just a day to remember that.
Yeah.
But it's not acknowledged at all, and it continues to happen. So
it's so bad.
Yeah, that's really hard. Hence why we want to do the Highway of Tears together, because it's such a horrific and expansive story that we probably couldn't even cover in one episode if we tried. So you did your best with this. Thank you for, featuring those women. Hopefully we get a chance to do another episode like this, because there are so many.
There are so many cases that, next time we have unsolved or missing, keep these in the back of your mind, because there's fucking plenty of them.
Well, you did a really good job, because I know it's hard to narrow down such an expansive topic. Even just the articles I saw with these girls' pictures, because, I needed it for the website. The list is like 30 pages long. It's horrible.
At the end of the documentary that I watched, Murder in Bighorn, that's specifically about the Crow Reservation in Montana, but at the end of it, they showed a page. Actually, I took a picture of it. I can't read all the names because it would take me another 40 minutes.
You should.
But they showed.
You should share it with me for the episode.
These are just cases in Bighorn County, and there are 27 times 3. There's 3 rows of names, and there's 27 in each row. Actually, it looks like there's more than 27 in the last row. Yeah, that's fucking insane. Just in the state of Montana. Just in this county in the state of Montana. This is just around the Crow Reservation.
That's insane. That's like 90
fucking
people.
Crazy. Yeah. In this small area.
That's too many.
Too many.
That's 90 too many.
It's so bad.
Assuming there's 90 names there, I'm not being a dick. There's that smoke
Yeah.
panic. But you did a really good job, and that was really heavy. So like Sierra said, when you're thinking about what to be thankful for this year, think about these women. Like, just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Give honor to them in some way. Tell their stories.
Yep.
And of course, love the people you're around, because life is short too. And yeah, I think it's good for us to know why certain holidays or days doesn't always have a good meaning, and it's kind of fucked up we celebrated it all. So
Yeah.
well, on that note, I'm gonna go have nightmares about Sierra's blood plasma. And
Yeah, I figured we would not do a gratitude today.
no,
because
it doesn't feel right. That
right.
given the week of the episode coming out and what we've talked about, just
Exactly.
we're gonna roll on out. But share this episode with friends and family. Share other podcasts that have shared these women's stories. Share books. There's so many resources out there, and I will list the resources that Sierra mentioned this week in the show notes. And go leave a 5-star rating and review, and we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep it twisted.
Twisted and Uncorked is a proud member of Weirding Way Media. Hosted and produced by Sierra Zorn and Alicia Watson. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening now. It really is the best way to spread the word. You can check out all things Twisted on our website, twistedanduncorked.com, and we will see you next Tuesday for a brand new episode.